Hey everybody, welcome to another collection video. This time I'm going to be showing my Game Boy collection. And when I'm saying Game Boy, I'm not just talking about the original, I also mean the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance. And I wanted to try and just pile them up all together because really I don't have a ton of games for either particular Game Boy. But in total, because they are all compatible with my Game Boy, with my GBA SP, I figured I'd just combine them all into one, since I would say that leads up to a total of a little over 30 games. I collected for the system for a good while, but I kind of stopped. Not necessarily by choice, I just haven't really gotten around to collecting for the Game Boy as of late, but I've been mostly just collecting for my PlayStation 2 and my Switch, my PS4, and recently I just got a PS5, so there you go. But I do have a pretty decent amount of games. I wouldn't say my collection's great. A lot of it is stuff I have had since my high school days and some of my childhood, but I do have some good stuff. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. First, I have Donkey Kong. This is a remake of the arcade game from 1981. This particular version was released in 1994, and this is actually a pretty fun game. I liked this one quite a bit. I was pleasantly surprised with it. I honestly prefer playing this one over the original arcade game. It just plays better, in my opinion. Pokemon Blue. It's a classic for sure, and I do still go back to this one every once in a while. But looking back on it now, it's definitely not aged gracefully, but it's not a bad game, though. Donkey Kong Land 2. This is kind of a remixed port of Donkey Kong Country 2, which I finished and I thought was a really good game. One of the best on the Super Nintendo. The game is pretty good on Game Boy, but it has its own share of hiccups, but not a bad game. Pac-Man Special Color Edition. This is basically just Pac-Man on the Game Boy Color, but it also includes a bonus game in Pac Attack, so that's pretty cool. It's not a bad conversion. I like it. Mario Golf. This was actually pretty fun. It's got some RPG elements to it, which is kind of neat for a game like this. Especially generally sports games and RPGs you normally would never see combined, but Nintendo and Camelot found a way to do it. But it's a pretty good game, actually. I also the N64 version is also really good. It's also done by Camelot, which they actually did the first Hot Shots Golf game, believe it or not, and Mario Golf on Nintendo 64 plays a lot like that. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe. Unfortunately, my copy doesn't even work anymore. It's broken now. I don't know what happened to it. I think the board is just the chip, it's kind of worn out, but I really enjoyed this game. Even though the screen crunch does hurt it a little bit, it's not too big of a deal. But I do have this on the 3DS from the Virtual Console, which I decided to grab before the service as of this video ends. So yeah, it's a really good game with a lot of extra content. So yeah, definitely recommend it. Kirby's Pinball Land, a decent little pinball game, nothing mind-blowing, but it's alright. Road Rash, this is a decent game on the Game Boy Color, but if I had to pick my favorite version of Road Rash, I would have to say the original PlayStation version. Yeah, the Genesis version is a classic, but I grew up playing the PS1 version more. But this game isn't bad on Game Boy Color, it's alright, but it definitely doesn't feel as impactful as the other versions. Yoshi's Cookie. It's a fun little puzzle game. Yeah, it's a little bit yellowed out, but it still works at the very least. That's what's important. It's a decent game. Super RC Pro Am. This was all right. It's basically just a handheld variation of the NES game. Not necessarily a port, but kind of like a reimagining, I guess, a remix. I'm not quite sure, but it's not bad. Blades of Steel. I'm generally not that fond of sports games, but this was actually really good. I like this one quite a bit. It feels really fun to play, and it's not super complicated. Pokemon Red, same opinion as Blue. I do think the games are still fun, even though they have definitely not aged gracefully because some of the parts of the game are pretty buggy, some glitchy mechanics and stuff like that. But it's not a bad game, not a bad game at all. Battletoads and Double Dragon. I actually didn't mind this game. A lot of people didn't really seem to care for it, but I kind of thought it was fun. It's a decent little beat 'em up for the system. Game & Watch Gallery 2. I really enjoyed playing this one. It's just a collection of mini games from the Game & Watch series. But there's modern versions and classic versions, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, my copy no longer works. I've had this one since I was like, I don't know, 12. And unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore. It stopped a long time ago. Like, it only partially works, but it doesn't allow you to play the games anymore because the game just freezes whenever you select a game. So, yeah. Donkey Kong Country. A lot of people don't really seem to like this part of the game, and that's fair. I get it. I do like this one, though. I thought it was actually a pretty decent conversion of the Super Nintendo game and pushes the limits of the system, too. My copy doesn't really work all that well anymore, though. I think the pins on this one got faded or something like that. I know the board on that thing is pretty messy now. I may have to get some of these repaired or something. I don't know, but I know one thing's for sure. It's definitely not working in my system anymore, but I really enjoyed this game. I thought it was kind of fun. Of course, I'm still not done. I still got some more stuff to show. Next, I have F-Zero GP Legends, which does a lot of things that push the system's limits. The game looks really good. All the cars, the vehicles are done with pre-rendered graphics, which actually look really spectacular for the system. Not to mention the courses look really good. The animation, the art style is really nice. I think this was actually based off of the anime, so that's kind of neat. The gameplay is really fun, albeit maybe a little on the easy side. It also has really high-quality voice samples. You wouldn't normally expect a Game Boy Advance game to have such good voice sampling, but it actually sounds quite good here. It's very clear. The music isn't that great, though, on this one at least. My problem with the music in this game is that it just feels a bit shallow. Not shallow, but it just feels a bit hollow. Like, there's no real fullness to it. Like, I was kind of expecting more with that, but it wasn't. But the game is still fun, though. F-Zero Maximum Velocity. This feels basically like a reimagining of the original F-Zero on the Super Nintendo. The gameplay is still very similar. There's like 4 cars to choose from and 15 stages, I think. Maybe there's more, I don't know. I thought this was a pretty good game, but the controls don't feel quite as good as they do on the other games in the series. Still, it's pretty good. I think my biggest complaint with the game, though, was the stages are a little bit too, the stages tend to drag out a bit. Compared to F-Zero and F-Zero X, where they never overstayed their welcome, and when they were long, it was long for a reason, but every stage feels a little too dragged out here. Spyro Season of Ice. I actually really enjoyed this game. It reminded me a lot of the PS1 games, so that was pretty fun. Hot Wheels Velocity EX and World Race. I honestly don't think Velocity X is very good. I think it's pretty bad isometric racing game. It's really clumsy. The controls are really awkward, and most of the time you can't steering correctly is a real bitch. The physics used in that game were just pretty shoddy. World Race is actually pretty fun though. It's not anything mind-blowing, but it's a pretty enjoyable game. It kind of plays like a Super Nintendo racing game with the Mode 7 behind the back graphics and all that. Street Fighter Alpha 3. I would have to say that this is one of the most interesting and one of the best home conversions of Alpha 3 for what it does, because this version of the game is seriously impressive. There's a ton of characters to choose from, a whopping 37 characters, either 36 or 37, but either way, it's still pretty impressive. The gameplay feels as close to the original Alpha 3 as it gets. A lot of the moves are still here. Of course, there are some attacks that had to be cut down to fit with the Game Boy Advance's button layout. But it actually works really well here, and the music is pretty solid too, even though some of the character select music is kind of annoying because it just loops the entire time. It gets a little boring after a while, but I do think it's a really well-made port. Plays well, looks great, and it's full of content, so yeah, good stuff. Tomb Raider Legend. The console versions are way better. This one's just kind of an unremarkable, lackluster, side-scrolling action game. I wouldn't really recommend it. Yu-Gi-Oh! The Eternal Duelist Soul. I actually really like this game. It is basically just the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game, but this was the game that actually made me a fan of the actual card game itself, and it taught me how to play it. I really enjoy the hell out of this game. It's just so much fun. It's tough, but it's a lot of fun. Road Rash Jailbreak. Really fun racing game, and probably one of my favorite Road Rash games. I had a lot of fun playing this game, and although it can get a little bit... There are moments where it does feel like it's a little dead, where the game feels a tad boring when you're in first place. The boredom is not usually all that frequent, and it's still a really fun game. I think my biggest issue is that the engine noise kind of gets annoying after a bit, so I have to turn the volume down. Tetris Worlds. This is a decent game for the system. It's basically just Tetris on Game Boy Advance. Some extra things. It's not bad. I believe this is basically a different version of the console game, which I have the PS2 version as well, and it's quite different. But Tetris Worlds on the GBA is not too bad. It's alright for what it is. The Legend of Zelda The Legend of Zelda A Link to the Past, which I also have the Super Nintendo version. And this is a really good version of the original game. I don't know if I can say it's better, but it's a pretty fun game on the system. Definitely worth playing. I love the original, so it was kind of nice to have that one. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. This game is so freaking fun. It is one of the best games on the system, in my opinion. It's hilarious. I love the humor of the dialogue. And I do think the battle system is a ton of fun. It's probably one of the best RPG battle systems I've ever seen. And it's from a damn Mario game. But it's not even deeply complicated. It's just an absolute blast to play. And that's what really sticks it out for me. It's just plain fun. Dynasty Warriors Advance. I grabbed this because I'm a fan of the series. This is not a bad game. I honestly don't think it really deserved all the hate. It's definitely got problems, but it's not that bad. Mario Kart Super Circuit. I wasn't really a big fan of this game, to be honest. Not that it's bad, but it doesn't really control that well, and it feels a bit... It honestly just feels a bit awkward to play. Tekken Advance. This is actually a pretty impressive... this is actually a pretty impressive game. Like, Tekken is normally seen as a 3D fighter, so for Namco to squeeze a 3D fighter onto a generally two-dimensional platform like the GBA is really something to behold. They actually managed to make the characters... They actually managed to downscale the characters to 2D, and they actually look pretty good. It's got all these nice little Mode 7 effects, and it even has some elements of the gameplay from the console games intact, like the you can still sidestep, and it has like this pseudo 3D effect where the ground turns when you sidestep or get launched in a different direction. It's really fun. I actually had a lot of fun playing this game. Pokemon Sapphire version, probably one of the best entries on the GBA, one of the best Pokemon games. I love this game. It's so damn good, but I do think Emerald is even better. Pokemon Fire Red. Out of all the Pokemon games, this is probably my most favorite. I've had so much fun with this game. I had so many memories playing it. This was also the first Pokemon game I ever got a level 100 Pokemon on, and also the first Pokemon game I ever beat. So damn good. So many memories. And the last game I have is Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. I think this game was better on GBA than it was on PS2. The PS2 version is not very good. I don't really think Chain of Memories is that good of a game to begin with, but it's at least decent on the GBA. At least plays well enough. My problem with Chain of Memories in general, though, is just the battle system. It's just not... It's not very intuitive. It's just not fun to play, and it's really frustrating to work with. So yeah, I wasn't really a big fan. But yeah. Anyways, that is my entire Game Boy collection. A little over 30 games. I definitely need to get more stuff for it, because there are some really good RPGs on here that I haven't played yet, or that I'm missing. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in another collection video. Take care.